Hey guys, welcome back. This video is going to go over page 4 of your packet, and it's going to cover slope, y-intercepts, and phase shifts. So let's begin with problem number 9 on page 4. Draw a line through the origin and the point 4, -5. Determine the slope of the line. Show your work. Okay, so let's break down this problem a little bit. First off, we're starting at the origin. So everyone should know what the origin is. That's right here. So on my graph, I would put a dot here. So I'm going to do an example over here. You're going to do the real one over here. Then it gives you another point 4, -5. So you should plot that on your grid. So I'm going to do the point -3, 2. Okay, so remember this is my x value and this is my y value. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, that's -3, and then I'm going to go up 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to just connect those 2 points that we've created. Okay, and remember we want to find the slope of that line. And so my work is I could just draw my triangle, right? And let's think about our little man. So we have our little man here, and we're going to determine, remember, he always walks in this direction. And we're looking at him, so it looks like he's going to walk downhill. So automatically, I know my slope is negative. Okay, let's determine my rise. So it looks like it rises 1, 2. So there's my 2. I'm going to put that in my rise. My run, let's count 1, 2, 3. So it looks like it's taking up 3 blocks. And there we go. And there's my work. Okay, so we had a little man going downhill, plotted our point. So same thing. So you have the origin, point, go ahead, plot that, and then just count your rise and your run. That should be pretty easy. So we're now on the problem 10. The graph is Enrique's work below. And it says Enrique, he found the slope of the line to be -1/4. So he got -2/8, which is -1/4, which is -1/4. So instead of doing Enrique's problem and analyzing his mistake, let's go over here and look at this problem and just find the slope of a line. And if you can find the slope of a line, then you can tell where Enrique went wrong. So the first thing is let's look at our little man, okay? And both of our little men here, remember they walk this direction, they're walking to the right. And we determine that if he's walking this, is he going to walk uphill or downhill? Okay, so my man's walking downhill, so I know my slope is negative. So the first thing we want to check is the sign right? And so that's a negative, and so based on your judgment, you're going to make that call as whether it should be negative or not. Then we have to find the points where it hits nice and clean. So I don't have a grid. I don't have my graph paper yet. I'll have it soon. But it hits right here, and we'd make our triangle. And so it looks like the rise is 3 and the run is 1. And so when I do my rise over run, I would get -3/1. So that would be the slope that I'm looking for my answer for this line. And so what you need to do is you need to find points, 2 points on this line, and then you need to go ahead and draw your triangle like I did, and then try to find the slope and determine where Enrique probably went wrong. Okay? This is number 11. And we're told that Alicia deposits the same amount of money into a savings account each month as shown by the graph. So remember, whenever we're given these types of graphs, so let's zoom in a little bit here and look at this a little closer. We always want to determine our scale. And so let's go from 0 to the first one. So think about that. It goes from 0 to 100, then 100 to 200. So think about your scale over here. How much is each one of these blocks going up? So think about what your rise is for each block, okay? And then let's look at what the scale is along here. So then think about what your run is. So that's going to give you your scale. Then remember, you want to go on this graph and you want to find points where it's hitting right at a corner. So this is a good point to pick right here. And then it looks like it hits right through a corner right here. So then think about what your rise would be and what your run would be. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to show that work by putting your rise, by writing that down, over your run. So you're going to get a number here and a number here. And then just don't forget to simplify. So then when you look at the second half of this question, it says, what does the slope of the line represent? Explain your reasoning. So remember, whenever they ask what it represents, you want to go back and you want to look at your descriptors for your y-axis and your x-axis. And so you want to use these words, the amount in dollars and the word months, and you want to use your slope, and you want to use these words and your slope to answer this question. okay? So if this said, you know, number of people per day, I would say if the slope is 25, I would say, okay, it's going up 25 people per day. Okay, 25 people per day, if that said amount of people and that said days. So you can go ahead and extrapolate that out from what I just said. We are now on problem number 1. This is the bottom half of page 4. It says, what is the y-intercept of a line? So remember, we have a graph here, and we have a y-axis and an x-axis. And so your y-intercept is always where your line crosses right here. And your point always comes in the form xy. Well, remember, your x values are over here and over here. And so this is 1, 2, this is -1, -2, here, 1 and 2 are here. So what does that make this point right here? Well, that makes this 0 from my x value. So my x value is always going to be 0, and then you're going to pull the y value from that graph. And so this can hit in a number of spots. If it hits down here, same thing. Your x value is going to be 0, and then you need to pull the y value from the graph. Okay, so up here, obviously the y should be positive. Down here, your y value should be negative. So you can go ahead and look at that graph, and you can go ahead and find, you know, look for your x values being 0, and then look at your y value and make sure that if it's in the bottom half, it'd be negative. If it's in the top half, it'd be positive. We're now on number 2. What is the slope of a line whose equation is y equals 1/5 x minus 1/2? So this is going to go back to where we need to think about the form y equals mx plus b. So in a normal slope equation, okay, you always have a y and you always have an x value. So those are present. So look, see, we have a y and an x. Then we also have an m and a b. And so you have to remember what m stands for, what b stands for. M is always your slope, okay? And so m is your slope, which is also your rise over your run, okay? So that number, okay, is always next to the x value. So when it's in this form, you're looking for that number next to the x. Your b always represents your y-intercept, okay? So let's say for a second that, knowing this, I give you an equation y equals 2x plus 1. Okay, so this would be my slope. My slope in this case would be 2/1. And my y-intercept would be pulling right from here, which would be 0, 1. Okay, so you see how I pulled both of those from that graph? So my slope is next to the x, and then this number with its sign is my y-intercept. So if this was a negative, if this was a minus sign, this would be a -1. So now go ahead and look at that problem, and this should be pretty easy to extrapolate the fact that m is your slope, b is your y-intercept, and you can go here, look in here and pull that number right out of one of those choices, and you're looking for that number next to the x value. Number 3, a line has a slope of -5 and passes through 1, -1. What is the equation of the line in point slope form? So this is brand new. We've never done point slope. So let me give you that equation real quick. Point slope is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So this is a formula we haven't learned yet, but let me talk about it. So remember, every equation that we graph, you have to have just a plain old y and a plain old x. Okay, so those are just going to stay here. And notice, look at all your answers. Every single answer has a plain y, and it has a plain x. So now, m is still the same thing it has been. M still represents your slope. Okay? Then, the reason this is called point slope, okay, this is called point slope here. The reason it's called point slope is because usually they give you a point, which your point is your x1 and your y1 value. So let's imagine that I'm not going to go over this problem here. Let me give you a different one, and then we can show how this works. So let's imagine we have a slope of 2, and then I'm given the point 1 and -5, okay? So using this formula, we're going to start with y minus, okay, so I'm just pulling this y minus, and then we're going to go ahead and put y1. So our y1 here is -5. So you see how I put the minus and the negative? So I put that right in here. Then I'm going to pull my m, which is next, so my slope, which is 2. That goes here. And then I'm going to put x minus, because that's part of the formula. And now I'm going to pull my x1. So I'm here, I'm going to pull x1, I'm going to replace that with a 1. And the only thing that happens now is anytime you have that minus a negative, we've learned about this before, this minus a negative is the same thing as a plus. And then that is as simple as we can make it, and so that would be our choice. So now go ahead and look at this problem. Okay, so here, right here is your slope. So think about what letter that would be. And then here's your point. Okay, so there's your point. And then you're going to go ahead and use this formula and plug in and find which one you think is correct. This is now number 5. The graph below shows y equals 3/4 x, which describes how the graph would need to be shifted in order to graph y equals 3/4 x plus 2. So let's go back to what we call slope-intercept, okay? So we've gone over this already. But slope-intercept is in the form y equals mx plus b, where remember m we said was your slope and b was your y-intercept. So if I give you an equation y equals 5/7 x, okay? Well, look, we have a y, we have an m, and an x. We have no plus b. So what do you think your y-intercept is for this equation? Well, I'll give you a hint. If there's nothing here, think about what represents nothing. So your y-intercept is actually 0, but they just don't put plus 0. So now, let's go to another equation. And let's say I graph the same equation, y equals 5/7 x plus 5. Okay, so let's look at this one and compare. So this one started at 0, and then this one is my y-intercept, and it went up to plus 5. How did I get from 0 to 5 on the y-axis? So think about that. So if you go to a graph, so let's go to a little graph real quick here. And let's just say I have a line that looks like this, right? So that's about 5/7, and it went through the origin. Then the next one has a y-intercept of 5. So how did I get from here up to there? Well, looks like I shifted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go ahead and look at this one, and you think about what's going on here. So I have nothing here, and then I have a plus 2. So look at those choices, and you just... Number 6, which equation best represents the line graph below? Okay, so we have a line graphed here, right? We have this line graphed. And so we need to remember the form y equals mx plus b. So we just talked about this. Remember, m is your slope, b is your y-intercept. These are both going to be present. So look, every equation has a y and an x, right? So every equation has a y and an x. So we need to pull our y-intercept and our slope from this graph. So let's go ahead and do our b first. So let's think what b is. So let's go here and look. Well, b hits right here. This is my y-axis. And I want to go down -1, -2, -3. So my b hits at -3. So we already have this part of the equation as a -3. The other thing I need is m. So remember, slope is rise over run. So let's write that down. Rise over run. So let's go ahead and pull that. So let's remember our little man. So I'm going to put my little man here. And remember, your little man always is here. And he walks that direction. So think about which way is he going to go down, up or down. Okay, think about mine. Which way is he going to go, up or down? So my guy is walking up. So I know my slope is going to be positive. Okay, so let's count. Let's make our triangle now. So let's count our rise. So we'll count hops. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a rise of 4. And then my run, well, that's just 1. So now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to plug in now. So I get y. I need to have that y. I need my slope, which is here. That's my m. 4/1. Put that next to the x. And then my b, I just pull that, which is -3. And we're done. Okay, so go ahead and pull your y-intercept. Find some dots which you can pick on your graph to find your slope. So I'm hoping that we can do that now on your own, and then you can answer that question.